very broad biological styles of thinking and behaving. And I ended up associated with these basic systems. Now, it's much more complicated than that. As serotonin goes up, dopamine goes down. They're all ratios, it's all scales, it's all dimensions, but for the night we're going to say it's basically very broad biological types of behavior. And so I looked at these over that Christmas, and I had written on a sheet of paper the traits, biological traits associated with the dopamine system, and the biological traits associated with these systems too. And I sat there and I said to myself, maybe you can create a questionnaire to see to what degree people express these 4 very broad systems. And it would have been 6 if I had found the data on 6 or 10, but I found it on 4. And then ask people these questions to see to what degree they express these biological constellations of traits, and then watch on this dating site who is drawn to whom. And so that's what I ended up doing. So I'm going to go through the 4 of them and then tell you what I ended up finding. The explorer, these people are born free, novelty-seeking, risk-taking, very curious. They've got the most interests of the 4 group, very broad interests, creative. Plato called them the artisan. Spontaneous, impulsive, energetic, restless, flexible, open-minded, optimistic. They're the most sexual of the 4 types. This is why if you're taking something like Prozac or something that drives up serotonin, you lose your sex drive, which is quite often the case. They'll give you something that drives up a dopamine to stimulate the sex drive again. These were the most sexual of the group, self-reliant and independent. Of course, there's always a dark side of the moon. You know, nobody gets out alive. There's always bad parts to the personality. These people tend to be manic, more likely to be unpredictable, reckless, addictive. Most of the addictions are in the dopamine system. Unreflective. They don't really care who they are. They look out, not in. And as a matter of fact, I'm the explorer type. And so I actually was at a conference in California, I don't know, 3 months ago, and there was a lot of therapists. And they are very much of a different type than the explorer. And I was saying how I didn't really care who I am, which I don't. I mean, I want to know enough so that I'm not a complete idiot, but I don't really care to spend a lot of time knowing who I am. And so I said that, and out of the back of the room, some man screamed, "You want to talk about that?" I didn't, of course. And I do actually think the therapy community somehow thinks that we all are interested in who we are, which is perfectly fine. Well, maybe we should know a little bit more about ourselves. But nevertheless, this type is not reflective, generally speaking. I think a perfect example of an explorer is Obama. All of the finest qualities of an explorer. When he talks about change, America knew he meant it. And he did. He may have meant it socially and culturally, but this biological type likes novelty. They like change. It's refreshing for them. He uses many of the words of the explorer type. A risk taker, any man from his background who shoots the way he did to the presidency of the United States is a daring person. Very optimistic. I mean, here we are at the, he got the worst job in the world, and he's hoping to change the world. Very creative, very curious. If you've read either of his books, he's extremely curious and creative. Very socially skilled, manipulates with diplomacy. The explorer is the actor. They back away from, they're charming. And you could see in the debates with he and McCain would directly attack, and then he would go around and attack from the back. I mean, in a very sophisticated, diplomatic way. Explorers tend to have the highest education in my sample of 40,000 people, and they're comfortable in their skin. That's a quote from a book on dopamine. They move easily, and you can watch how really stylishly and gracefully Obama moves. They also have a very expressive face, which he does. I think Angelina Jolie is another example. She's got a tattoo on her arm, I think it's on her arm, of a window. Freedom. You got to have freedom. I mean, this daring, unconventional person. So, I'm not saying that all explorers are alike. I mean, some people are exploring in the library, and some people are jumping off mountains, and etc. But the temperament is associated with the dopamine system. This risk-taking, novelty-seeking, curiosity, creativity. I did a study among my people at chemistry.com of 178,000 men and women, and I wanted to find out what words they were most likely to use, the top 10 words. So I created a list of 170 words, and to see, what words these people used. And the top word used by the explorers was adventure, energy, dopamine, new, fun, travel, active. It's all dopamine. The builder is the pillar of society. Elevated activity in the serotonin system. Traditional, conventional, cautious but not fearful. They're not scared, they're just cautious. Calm, social. This is why when you take Prozac or Paxil, you do become calmer. I mean, that's why the people take it. Networking, they're very community-oriented and family-oriented. Managerial, very cooperative, literal, precise, fact-oriented. I think a good example was George Washington. He was a builder. I'm just getting interested in history. This biological type showed up at exactly the right time in American history. Very dutiful, respects authority, likes rules and schedules and routines, loyal, conscientious, persistent. It's called sustained attention. Builders could work in a pea factory. Nobody's going to hire an explorer to can peas. They can't. I tried to get a job in a pea factory once when I was a lot younger. Nobody would hire me because they don't have that sustained attention to do rote things. In fact, even their doodles are very different. The doodles of I've got data on 40,000 people. The doodles of the explorer are wide and open and motion, and the doodles of the builder are they're grids. They like grids, and they like patterns that are very even. They like plaid shirts. It's associated with serotonin. It's orderly. Plaid shirts are orderly. Plato called them the guardian. Protective, they want to serve. They are the most religious, and there's going to be a lot of genes involved in religiosity, but we have found some of the genes associated with self-transcendence, and they're in the serotonin system. This is the most interesting one for me. They tend to be numerically creative. They make very good accountants. They're very good with numbers. Downside, a little stubborn, closed-minded, a bit rigid when they're not in good shape, unreflective, controlling. A good example, I think, of a very fine builder is Colin Powell. Very traditional, very family-oriented, cautious but not fearful, really interested in loyalty. Was loyal to Bush even when he really would not, I think, have gone into Iraq. I'm beginning to see how these personality styles affect the world. I think Tiger Woods is a builder. What is golf but patience and calm and focus? Yeah, I was never good at it. I kept on wanting to see where the ball was going, so I never looked down. And it's a social game, and these people are social. They're skilled socially. They're skilled at network. They are the community organizers and the builders. And a quote from him, family comes first. Gordon Brown of England really interests me. He's very much of a builder. And he's got many of the characteristics of the builder, but he is good at numeric creativity. He was excellent as the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And I was talking actually a couple of days ago to some Brits who said to me, he's in his element with this world financial crisis because, he's comfortable with trying to figure this thing out. I'm not surprised that he has sort of risen to the top of world leaders who are trying to address this system. They are the most religious of the group than other types. They're also more politically conservative. In this same study of 178,000, the top word that they used was family. Morals, respect, loyal, trust, values, and another one on trust. It's one of my questions on my thing. You'll see it if you go to answer the question. One of my questions was, would you rather have loyal friends or interesting friends? I love that question. Now, we all want loyal friends, and we all want interesting friends, but only the builder has to have the loyal friends. The other three types can't tolerate not having the interesting friends. And if I were to ever show you the raw data to watch how these 40,000 people responded is just fascinating. The director, they shoot for the stars, testosterone, analytical, logical, direct, decisive, tough-minded, exacting, good at what scientists call rule-based systems. Everything from chess to building bridges to computers. Bill Gates is a perfect example. Donald Trump in New York building buildings. Beethoven, actually, they're very good at musical understanding because that's very spatial. Albert Einstein, I think, was very much of a director. Focus, it's a very narrow focus, but it's a very deep focus. Competitive, rancor. If you inject testosterone actually into a monkey, it'll start to fight for rank. Middle-aged women, as levels of estrogen go down, unmasking testosterone, become much more assertive. There's a great deal of data on the basic biology and the psychological characteristics of the estrogen system. Emotionally contained. These people, when they talk, move only their mouth. It's like this. You can see McCain talking only like this, and Obama's using the whole face. That's testosterone. Independent, autonomous, self-discipline. Heroic altruism is in the testosterone system. These are the people who will rush into a building, a burning building, and to save somebody they don't know. And then they're called heroes, and you interview them and say, well, you're a hero, and they say, no, I was just doing my duty. And in some respects, they are, of course, a hero, but they are being who they are. The downside, of course, is aggressive, workaholic, poor verbal skills. They say what they mean. They do not wish to be polite. They can be impatient, brute. It's called mind blindness. They just don't get it. They don't see what the other people are doing around them. As a matter of fact, you can be so nuanced around them that they don't get it. If you are very direct with them, they will respect you more and get it. That I think, is one of the many things you can use from all this. Once you get to know what these people are like, each basic biological type, you can reach them in their world. McCain is a perfect example. Look at that jaw. That is testosterone. And heavy brow ridges, that's testosterone. Heavy forehead, that's all built by testosterone. He was proud of being a maverick and tough-minded, aggressive, warlike. He used the word fight 43 times in his acceptance speech. Very proud of saying, I'm not Mr. Congeniality, direct, blunt. Real spatial skills, that's testosterone. Fighter pilot, you got to have spatial skills. And a rather narrow focus. I think it was an interesting moment when the real beginning of the financial crisis hit home, and he said, well, let's stop the campaign. I want to go back to Washington and just focus on just focus on the financial crisis. And Obama said, yeah, I thought a president had to do more than one thing at a time. And these are two different minds, seeing reality in different ways. And I think, much of the world worried that he was warlike. And I do think that he had some of the biology of exactly that. In my questionnaire, not in the book, but otherwise, when you create a real scientific measure, you got to figure out that you have to prove that you are actually measuring what you say you're measuring. And so one of the things that I did, this comes out of the 1930s. The most recent book was called The Second to Fourth Digit Ratio. And if you're looking at your right hand, actually women, it's probably better with the left hand, but generally with the right hand. If you had a lot of testosterone washing over the brain in the womb, you're going to often, not always, have a longer fourth finger than second finger. If you had more estrogen in the womb, the two fingers will be the same length, or the index finger, the pointing finger, will be longer. And so what I did is I looked at my sample of 40,000 people and got my director group, and then I matched to see whether they had a longer fourth finger, and they did. And take a look at that. That was a dream come true. The day he conceded, this was on the front page of the New York Times, and I said, thank you, God. I think Hillary Clinton is a director. I got to read more about her, but she's direct, decisive, tough-minded, ambitious, and I think quite emotionally contained. There are many more men in my director category, but there certainly are some women. And there are many more women in this next category, the negotiator, but there certainly are men. Apparently, American football players have a great deal of estrogen as well as testosterone. You can be high on both, low on both, high on one or high on the other. So the last, for the director, once again, all these people, the first and most important word for them was intelligent and intelligence. Now, all four types have their own varieties of intelligence. Nobody's ever going to really perfectly measure what intelligence is, but this was the word that they used most. Geek, nerd, ambition, driven, politics, challenge, debate. They're all high testosterone. The negotiator is the fourth. Plato called them the philosopher king, associated with estrogen. These people see the big picture, contextual, holistic, imaginative. They're very imaginative. I'll tell you later, if I have time, the difference between, I think, imagination and creativity. I think the explorer tends to be more creative, but I think that the negotiator is more imaginative. Real good people skills. Real good intuition. It's called theory of mind in academia. The ability to get into somebody's head and figure out what they're doing is associated with estrogen and oxytocin. I got to add oxytocin there. Empathetic, intuitive, nurturing, tactful, trusting. They can be so trusting that they are gullible. Emotionally expressive, introspective. These are the ones who want to know who you are. They want to have an intimate conversation with you, an authentic one, even in the supermarket line. And I understand that, actually. They want to get right to the core of what that magazine cover really means. Very agreeable, accommodating, flexible, mentally flexible, idealistic, and very egalitarian. Some of the downside, indecisive. They can think of a million ways to do it. And so, they don't get to making any decision. Unfocused, they can stab you in the back because they don't want to, they're so charming and so agreeable, and they don't want to have any competition or debate or, express that, so they'll go behind your back. They'll ruminate, it can be quite unforgiving. I think one of their biggest problems is they're so agreeable that they can look like a doormat. Actually, these people are really quite independent, one of the most independent of the groups. But I think Bill Clinton is a good example of the negotiator. I mean, I feel your pain, I tell you, and nobody but the negotiator is going to say that. Broad-minded, language skills. I bought his biography. Holy smokes, it's 963 pages. He can't stop talking, the whole world knows that. Real people skills, emotionally expressive. I don't know if you saw him during the Democratic convention, but the whole time Hillary was speaking, he was crying. It was very sweet. Broad-minded, this is a quote from his book, it's important to have a synthesizing mind. And look at the baby face. No heavy brow ridges, the round face. I think Oprah is very much of the negotiator, intuitive, verbal skills, compassionate, and educator and reader. Estrogen is associated with all of the language skills. The words that these people use, the top word is passion, heart, sensitivity, reader, sweet, learning, random, chaos, and empathy. So I designed the questionnaire, and what you do is you take questions out that don't work, and you put ones in until you get something that is scientifically accurate. And then I started giving it to the people on chemistry.com. And I took several samples, and my final sample, so having established this questionnaire and what I was looking for, I could then take a look to see who you love. That be the question. Why him? Why her? I had to find out who you are in order to find out who you love, but the project was to find out who you love. And so I watched first dates, and I took a sample of 28,128 people. I could have done it with 500,000. I probably will at some point. And here we are. Female explorer goes for male explorer. Somebody like themselves. Male explorer goes for female explorer. Gender does not make a difference. We are not studying gender. We are studying biology. Female builder goes for the male builder. Male builder goes for the female builder. In this case, birds of a feather flock together. Female director goes for the male negotiator. I think this is Hillary and Bill. Male director goes for the female director. I think this is the classic American tough guy at the bank with the lovely little wife and the picket fence, and you wonder, how did they get along? And indeed, they're pooling their resources, going to get along just fine. And the female negotiator goes for the male director. And the male negotiator goes for the female director. So in this case, opposites attract. And so when people ask me, do opposites attract, I say it depends on who you are. If you're an explorer, not as much. If you're a builder, not as much. If you're a director and negotiator, yes. Now, there's always going to be variations on this thing. But these were the patterns that I found in nature. So I honestly think that love is like a funnel. The timing is right. You walk into a room. You got this love map in your brain of what you are going to be looking for. And you scan the room, and you see somebody who's boy, that'd be good. And you go over to them. So right off the bat, they're in. Too short, too tall, too fat, too thin, too pink, too green, too stupid looking, out. So then you go and you talk to them, and they open their mouth. And instantly, if they got the wrong accent, they're out. If they voted for Sarah Palin, they're out. I'm sorry for anybody I've insulted. And you almost immediately pick up on some of their values, and even their religious interests. And all the way through this first conversation and subsequent ones, there are breaking points. And if they don't fit within your concept of an ideal partner, or at least enough of those characteristics, they're out. But all along the way, I think biological temperament, all of those traits that I have been carrying on about, play a role, drawing you really subconsciously to some people rather than another. And so, can this last? Can it last? The last of the 3 studies that I did with my colleagues, Art Aaron, Lucy Brown, and Bianca Acevedo, was among these people who report that they're still in love after an average of 21 years of marriage. All of the textbooks say love cannot last. And as it turns out, we found activity in exactly the same brain region that becomes active when you've just fallen in love. We also found activity in a brain region associated with deep attachment, So it's romantic love and attachment. And what the only real difference that we found is that certain brain regions associated with early anxiety and tension had declined and instead been replaced by brain regions associated with calm. And so you remain in love with the person, but and you still want to share with them and talk with them and be with them and hold their hand. But if they don't email you 2 hours after you left them, you don't sit at the end of your bed and cry because it's been replaced by calm. So I'm just going to go through a couple of these combinations to see. There's 10 basic combinations. An explorer can go out with an explorer, a builder, a negotiator, a director, etc. There's basically 10. I'm going to go over the 4 natural ones. I honestly think that any one of them can work, as long as you sustain what I call what are called your positive illusions. As long as you continue to think she's young, pretty, smart, funny, no matter what you see, you are going to continue to stay in love with this person. Anyway, here are an explorer-explorer match. They're going to have fun. They're really sexual, curious, flexible, irreverent, both avoid plans and schedules, both unconventional. They're going to have a lot of fun. Their problems, I think, are going to be recklessness, perhaps addiction, unreflectiveness. I think they're going to throw under the rug their problems until they keep mounting and not solve them because they don't want to talk about it. Unpredictability. They're going to have a lot of fun. These people are not going to have a fight over how you mop the floor. Do it any way you like. I don't care, they'll say. Their problems will be, I think, some big problems, if they have any at all. 2 builders, I think, are going to have a different problem. I think they're probably going to have a very solid marriage. As a matter of fact, I just started with this new book, a website called whyhimwhyher.com. And something like 40,000 people have just gone to it. You can take my test for free. What I'm really interested in is I put a happiness test in, because so far I've only studied people who've just fallen in love. And something like 54% of people on that site were married and married long term. So I will now study that data and see how these personality types work out over the years. But their problems are, I think they're both emotionally contained, both likely to be frugal, both going to help with the neighborhood parties and building family. I think both are more likely to be loyal. They're both going to appreciate making plans, following conventions, following traditions. But their problem is going to be over how you mop the floor, because everybody's got their way of doing it. And they can be closed-minded about other ways of doing things. So I would guess that these are the couples that bicker during the course of their lives, but stay together long-term. Director and negotiator, now we got 2 different people. We got a very narrow focus and sees the big picture. What a wonderful combination. Pooling. They probably have, in fact, my hypothesis is they have wonderful conversations, each adding a different pile of components to the issues. The direct can really help the indirect. The tender-hearted can really help the tough-minded. The sympathetic can really help the unsympathetic. The analytical can fix the computer. The reflective can fix the emotional problems in the marriage. Very poor people skills and very good verbal skills. I don't seem to line up here. Very different people who have evolved a mechanism to pool their resources to raise their young. As a matter of fact, I think that Mother Nature, or nature, she's thought of everything. With the negotiator and the director, she has 2 personality styles pooling their resources to raise their babies. Very different personalities. An alternative plan is very traditional, stoical type, going through thick and thin to raise their babies. That's the 2 builders. And then, of course, my question was, why would there have evolved this concept of, why would two explorers, why would that have evolved? I mean, they're going to say, let's go and walk Tibet, and somebody's going to say, well, what do we do with the baby? And we want to take the baby, How is this going to, how is this adaptive, Once you see patterns in nature, you got to figure out why this might be adaptive. And I think